What is up, and welcome back. Another episode of Blood and Beer, show where we talk blood sport and we drink beer, and we got a lot of blood sport to talk this weekend. UFC Nashville, what a card that was. 8 finishes on 12 fights. We had boxing go down. Katie Taylor gets her third victory over Amanda Serrano on Netflix. Historic card for women's boxing, all women's fights. And then on Saturday in boxing, we had David Morrell get gifted a decision over Imam Katayev, and then Sheeraz Stevenson dominates William Zepeda. Hamza Sheeraz stops Edgar Berlanga in the 5th round after dropping him twice in the 4th. Shuts down the hype train of Edgar Berlanga. But we're talking about it all and more. UFC White House, PFL Cape Town, UFC 318. We're getting into it all, and this is a live Q&A, so if you got any questions, drop them in the chat, and I'll be getting to them as soon as I can. But without further ado, we're sipping on some Busch lattes today, and we're going to kick things off with UFC Nashville. Like I said, what a card that was. 8 finishes, 12 fights, can't beat it. Derrick Lewis in the main event goes out there, 35 seconds is all it takes to dispatch of Taliesin Teixeira. And you can say what you will about it, how it may have been an early stoppage from Jason Herzog, how, Taliesin Teixeira was coming back, but regardless, you watch the knockdown. Derrick Lewis had this dude's head rattling. I mean, it was so not looking good for the guy. And then when he's going to get back to his feet, he's grabbing the cage to climb up. I know you don't stop a fight and give out a TKO because of a foul, but if a guy is having to break the rules, use illegal tactics to defend himself, then he's not intelligently defending himself, in my opinion. So I don't think that's a bad stoppage. Derrick Lewis goes out there, stops the hype train that never even got started with Taliesin Teixeira, and afterwards, pisses on the corner doggy style of Teixeira, says they were talking shit. I don't speak Portuguese, but I know they were talking shit. So love the energy out of Derrick Lewis. And with how bad heavyweight is right now, he could be in a title fight in his next fight. Cyril Gane, the guy's out there, and everybody's saying he's the next man up, but he's coming off a very controversial win over Alexander Volkov. And Dana White said it himself, he didn't think Cyril Gane won that fight. Next guy up might be Yailton Almeida, who's lost to Curtis Blades and then is beat up on everybody else, but doesn't have that signature win he needs to get a title fight. Derrick Lewis is a name. It sells. He's on a 3-fight win streak. Why the hell not? And if he wins the championship from Tom Aspinall, how funny would that be? John Jones would come back that next day and challenge for that belt. Derrick Lewis versus John Jones at the White House. What a turn of events the heavyweight division will have taken. But also, turning back that 25-year-old, that means heavyweight's still going to remain kind of stagnant, where we have the Derrick Lewis's and Cyril Ganes, these guys that have been at the top for a while now but haven't broken through. While Derrick Lewis, he's done the damn thing. He's a Hall of Famer. It's just heavyweights. For Derrick Lewis to be in a title fight, or even in the conversation of a title fight, that's insane for how he hasn't really beat anybody. Oh, Rick Allen. Buddy, I don't know. I think he adopts children from underprivileged parts of the world, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure on that one, buddy. But moving on, because that main event only lasted 35 seconds, we're not going to spend a ton of time on it. Fight that was fun as hell, though. Gabriel Bonfim taking on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Bonfim goes out there in the first round. He's outstriking Wonderboy in his grappling. He's doing the damn thing, controlling him, taking Wonderboy down, even threatening submissions with a rear naked choke at one point. And then you go into round 2, and Wonderboy starts tagging Bonfim. He's stuffing the takedowns. He's getting the advantage in the striking. And close to the end of the round, Wonderboy checks a kick, or Bonfim checks a Wonderboy kick. It drops Wonderboy and splits his shin open all the way to the bone. Wonderboy gets right back up, though, throws a head kick, wobbles Bonfim, attacks, doesn't quite get him out of there, saved by the bell. And round 3 was just a whole lot of nothing, where not a lot was going on, and Bonfim had control. Wonderboy had some striking success. It could have gone either way. Eventually, it goes to the scorecards, though. Split decision for Bonfim. You can't hate it. Wonderboy certainly didn't look washed in there for being 42 years old. And Bonfim, Is he top 10 caliber? I don't know, but that's the kind of fight you need to test yourself. Maybe that's just the confidence builder he needs to be one of these next 170 up and comers that we have, the new wave coming in at 170. But Rick Allen says it's a fair question, bro. Bit unusual. It is a bit unusual, Rick Allen. I'm not sure why though. Wonder you're not retired now, Thompson. Yeah, it wouldn't be a terrible thing if the guy retired. He didn't look washed out there, but he doesn't look the same that he used to look. And he doesn't need to take damage when he's done everything he's going to do. He's not going to fight for a title again. He's got all these schools where he's training people. It would be a great thing for the guy to retire, but I would like to see him go out on a win. I think if he would have won this, he would have quietly rode off into the sunset. .318 blows, bro, Rick Allen says. And you're absolutely right. .318, trash card. .319 is decent, but yeah, .318 is absolutely trash. You're no doubt about it. So we can talk about that real quick, because .318, it is trash. When you're being co-headlined or co-main evented by Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov in 2025, that's a rough look. And the next best fight on there, you got Dan Ige versus Patricio Pitbull. Not really a needle mover. Kevin Holland versus D-Rod's a fun fight for the hardcores, but it's not moving the needle. And then on the prelims, you got some actual fun fights that if you had anything of name value bringing people in, it would be real entertaining. You got Kyler Phillips and Vinicius Oliveira. You got a grudge match with Marvin Vettori and Brendan Allen. But the card itself just it's trash. You're not wrong about that. DDP versus Chimaev. I got a weird feeling that DDP is going to get it done. Chimaev could absolutely trip him up, grab the legs with his legs, and choke him out real quick, but DDP is just awkward and durable, and I don't think Chimaev's gas tank's going to hold up. He's been training with TJ Dillashaw's team, but TJ Dillashaw's team isn't going to fix a gas tank. The way Hamzat fights, that's just not sustainable to have gas for 5 rounds. And I think that DDP can outlast him. I think DDP's also a better striker, even though it's awkward and it looks terrible. So I like DDP in that one, but I could also see Chimaev just running him over. It's a tough fight to pick because we've only seen 1 or 2 guys really challenge Chimaev, and that was at 170 with Gilbert Burns, and then short notice with Kamaru Usman. And Kamaru, who knows where he's at right now. So Rick Allen asks, what happens if they do a White House card and it starts pissing rain all over the fighters? They're going to do a rain delay during the card. So I think if they do a White House event, even if it's partially outside, I think they'd have a tent over the octagon and surrounding areas enough to where blowing rain couldn't get in and make the surface slippery. Because if it rains, you can't even have a rain delay because the humidity is going to make it, after it's been wet on that surface, you're not going to dry it off. So I think that they're going to have a tent over it, or it's going to be in a mausoleum or something. They're going to build a temporary stadium that they can tear down. It's 250th anniversary of our country. Anything's possible. I think it's going to be looking like an Apex event with a super card, but I don't think we're getting 20,000 people there either. All right. Moving on, though. Steve Garcia, dispatches of Calvin Kattar, unanimous decision, pretty dominant the whole time. Calvin Kattar, he looks washed. He looks like his timing's not there, just doesn't have the motor to keep going. Steve Garcia, though, this guy's awkward. He's got a weird style. He's got very unpredictable striking, very powerful striking, and he moves weird, kind of herky-jerky, but in his own flow state. So Steve Garcia, it's hard to say how far he'll go because Kattar looked a little washed, and Garcia, he hasn't fought the best competition, but he's on a huge win streak right now, 5 or 6, and he was on a 4-fight knockout streak coming into this. Nobody knocks out Calvin Kattar, but yeah, he did the damn thing, looks good. Fun fight, beat on him. He beat on the guy for 3 rounds, 30-27 across the board. Now talk about a fun fight, though. We got goodness gracious, Morgan Charrier. he took on Nate Landwehr. In round one, Charrier, you could tell he wanted it to be a kickboxing fight where they're going out there, they're touching, they're just striking back and forth, each throwing their combination counter strikes. Nate Landwehr didn't want none of that. He goes out there and he's just making it a barn burner. He's getting in the face, throwing the timing off of Charrier, and in round two, Landwehr's having a lot of success. He's hurting Charrier, throwing him off. Charrier doesn't know what to do, looks super uncomfortable. In round three, Charrier comes out and says, finally, I'm just going to engage in the brawl. He starts swinging wild and puts Nate Landwehr out. He drops him, Landwehr gets up, and then he puts him out cold. Well, it looked like he was out cold. Landwehr jumps right back up, but it was a good stoppage. Fun-ass fight. Gets fight of the night, no doubt. Yeah, it was a barn burner. Exactly what you expect out of Nate Landwehr in Tennessee. You know, at one point in the fight, Charrier hit Nate Landwehr with a low blow. Nate Landwehr kind of tried to brush it off. Ref says, you good? He's like, fuck yeah, I'm good. And then he starts screaming at Charrier. He throws a wild punch, misses. But yeah, it was a wild scene. Rick Allen here says, the weather in D.C. is very unpredictable. Dana is taking a big chance if he does that. You're absolutely right. And Dana hates outside cards because it's unpredictable. The UFC doesn't like anything that they cannot control. That's why they don't co-promote. That's why they don't do one-fight contracts. That's why they don't do the sponsors on the trunks anymore. They don't like anything they can't control. It makes them uneasy when they're not in charge. That being said, though, you know, if they set up that tent, big old mausoleum, I don't know how they're going to do it. They say it's going to be on the South Lawn. I think that's like 18 acres, so plenty of room, but yeah, it's going to be a weird scene, but they got a year to figure it out, so we'll have to wait and see. And then Vitor Petrino, so we're moving on. Vitor Petrino, he moves up to heavyweight, making his heavyweight debut against Austin Lane. Goes out there, gets rid of him real quick. Round one, rear naked choke. Austin Lane looked to have the range early, but Petrino gets the takedown, and from there, he just chokes him out. I mean, not much to say about it. Guy looks great. This is a guy that could breathe life into the heavyweight division. If he was just worried about getting hit at 205 because the weight cut was so bad that his chin was gone, and now at heavyweight, dude looks stacked. He looks like he's a real heavyweight. Hey, let's see some more Vitor Petrino. Guy's a fun fighter. And heavyweight just sucks, but also you beat Austin Lane, one of the worst heavyweights on the roster, and there's not many heavyweights on the roster, so, and at that, not many good heavyweights on the roster. So, what's that say about you? Not much yet, but we got to see a small sample size, and you did what you were supposed to do. As a minus 700 favorite, you go out there and get rid of the guy in about a minute, so no problem there. And then Tuco Tokos pulls off the upset, beats Junior Tafa. I don't know what the UFC's fascination with the Tafa brothers are. Always putting them on pay-per-views or big card main cards. It just doesn't make sense to me. These guys aren't really entertaining fighters. They're not well-rounded. They're not really that good. And Junior Tafa, he looked like he got in shape for this when he's at 205, but still has no ground game. Tuco Tokos controls him for 8 minutes out of this, goodness gracious, 8 minutes out of this 9.5 minute fight. Eventually gets the arm triangle win. First victory in the UFC. I really still don't think Tuco Tokos is all that great, but Junior Tafa I think is really bad. I think Justin Tafa is pretty bad. Old Dave says, if it ain't Tafa, I don't wanna. Hey, I don't wanna any Tafa. If it's a Tafa, I don't wanna. I tell you that, buddy. The Tafa brothers are absolute non-needle movers. When I see them on a pay-per-view or on a main card, I'm just like, what a wasted spot for someone else. Because these guys are not going to get over. They're not going to all of a sudden figure out how to do the ground game. They get taken down and they just look pissed off. They're like, this isn't how the fight was supposed to go. Instead of trying to get up, they're just like, fuck. Sit here and be pissed until the round ends and hope I can knock your head off eventually. And it never happens. There's a game plan to beat them. You either hold them against the cage or you hold them on the ground, but they're just not good. So, and speaking of not good, Chris Curtis didn't look particularly good in his split decision victory over Max Griffin. Fight was close, I guess. Griffin, I thought, clearly took the first round. Rounds 2 and 3, I thought could have gone either way. Curtis looked a little more accurate and his strikes did a little more damage, but Griffin had Curtis cut from round 1. He did a little more, threw a little more. It was a real non-fight of a fight. I wasn't super big on it, but Chris Curtis gets the split decision win in his return to 170, so maybe the weight cut was an issue, but I think Curtis is more so one of those guys that just fights up to his competition, fights down to his competition. He goes out there against Kopylov and puts on a war, ends up losing, but that guy's way high level. And then he goes up against Max Griffin and same thing, puts on a war against a guy that's really not high level, not super technical. He's looked good in fights, he's looked bad, and this one was this was a non-fight for me. He looked better in the fight where he stormed the cage at Toughen Up and he hit the nasty little Muay Thai clinch on Luis Hernandez with Sean Strickland in that tag team title matchup they had a couple weeks ago. But I digress. Moving on, Jake Matthews, speaking of a non-fight, he went out there, and I don't think he had to throw a strike. He takes Chidi Njokuani's backpacks him, rear naked choke, and Njokuani tries to throw him off of him, can't get it done. Jake Matthews, under a minute, just over a minute, gets the submission, and keeps the ball rolling. He's on a 3-fight win streak now, maybe 4, but yeah, guy who UFC kind of viewed as a prospect for a very long time, finally coming into his own, and doing the damn thing. Again, 170. It's clearing up. We're getting new contenders, fresh blood, younger guys moving in there. Jake Matthews could be a dark horse of the division that's been around forever, but nobody really looked at for the past couple years as a guy that could carry the flag, or he's a guy that could make a stake for himself in the top 10 or the top 5. And I'm starting to see that more out of Jake Matthews. While I'm not a huge fan of his fight style or him in particular, I do think that what he's able to do, find ways to win. He'll box you if you're not a great boxer. If you're not a great grappler, he's immediately going for the grappling exchanges. So I like what Jake Matthews has been able to do since transitioning, or since getting a little bit older and figuring out who he is as a fighter. He's just fighting smart. He's doing the Bilal Muhammad method, but a little more athletic and a little more entertaining. He's not going to fight you where you're best at. Goodness gracious, got some allergies going on here. But moving on, we had Walter Walker. What a wild thing this guy's on. 3 heel hook finishes in a row at heavyweight as he wraps up a heel hook over Kennedy Njokuani in just over a minute in his fight. 3rd in a row. You'd never see that. Give him whoever. I mean, rocket ship this guy to the moon. Johnny Walker's brother. He looks like Igor. I mean, the guy looks crazy. Goes out there and just tackles you, grabs the leg, and rips your foot off. He's nasty, and I like him. I like what he's been able to do. I've never been high on him until this fight. You get a 3rd heel hook submission. That's pretty impressive. Again, new life at heavyweight. At least he's got a threat that people have to worry about. He's got something that, makes people have to worry. Something that brings you to the table at heavyweight, something entertaining. You don't see jiu-jitsu practitioners at heavyweight, not primarily jiu-jitsu practitioners anymore, at least. We don't have Fabricio Verdums around anymore, or the Nogueiras with their jiu-jitsu or anything like that. We don't have anything like that anymore. All right. Oh, I skipped over Eduardo Mara. Gets a decision victory over Lauren Murphy in Lauren Murphy's retirement fight. 29-28 across the board, whole lot of nothing. Lauren Murphy kind of turned it on a little bit late, but not enough to steal the fight, so is what it is. Lauren Murphy kind of she fought for the title, but more so a disappointing career. She's gone out there, she's been tough as nails, but just when you fight in the eras of the Valentina Shevchenkos, the Amanda Nunes, you're going to get overshadowed, and she was not somebody that stood out during her time in MMA in general, so is what it is, but happy trails to Lauren Walker. Is that her name? Lauren Murphy. Goodness gracious. Moving on, though, we got Mike Davis. He gets a round 2 knockout over Mitch Ramirez. These guys were trading. I mean, it was fun. You wouldn't have guessed that Mike Davis was a minus 1,200 favorite coming into this fight. They were both trading boxing combos nonstop, really until the end of the fight. Gets stopped in round 2 after Davis lands a nice combination, touches body and head, and gets the knockdown and finishes him off with a little bit of ground and pound. But happy trails, Lauren Walker. Yeah, I fucked that up, didn't I? But, yeah. Mitch Ramirez was tagging Mike Davis. Mike Davis didn't look like he liked getting hit early on. Eventually catches his bearings and comes to, gets the finish, does what he's supposed to do as a minus 1,200 favorite, but he did, it would have looked like a pick'em if you were just watching the fight. That was a close fight up until the very end. And then finally, in the curtain jerker, Fatima Klein gets the round 3 knockout over Melissa Martinez. Head kick, followed up with some ground and pound. Beautiful shot. She faked the left and then faked the left hand and then brought up the left kick, knocks her out, and finishes her up with some ground and pound. So shout out Fatima Klein, on a roll at 115 in the UFC, and she's going to be a problem if she can just be matched correctly. You don't give her somebody that's going to wrestle her to death. But at the same time, there's not a lot of people that are going to do that at 115 at this point. UFC women's divisions are very shallow, so she could be in a title shot in the next 2 years probably. Maybe next year. You never know. UFC women's division, like I said, shallow as hell right now. But the card banged. Overall, UFC Nashville over-delivered. 8 finishes, 12 fights. You can't beat it. So, card banged. And we'll move on to some boxing where on Friday night on Netflix, UFC boxing had a historic night for women's boxing, headlined by the Trilogy, Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano 3. And Katie Taylor goes out there and outboxes Serrano. Serrano had a very different approach for this one, and it was a super close fight. Both landed a ton of strikes, but instead of a brawl that we saw in the first 2 fights, Serrano went out there and played more into Katie Taylor's game, where she boxed her. She stayed on the outside, and she tried to counter her technical strikes with her own, and that's Katie Taylor's game. While Serrano outlanded Taylor as she did in the previous 2 fights, Taylor's strikes are more clear that they landed in the check left hook that Katie Taylor was landing. It was flush. It was a game changer, and every time Serrano tried to move out, Katie Taylor was catching her with that. So gets the decision. It was close, majority decision, but again, 3-0. Regardless of how you scored the first 2 fights, Katie Taylor going down in history is 3-0 against Amanda Serrano. And the rest of the card kind of sucked. I don't think this card drew a lot of new fans if there were casual viewers watching for the spectacle on Netflix. I don't think you got people saying, oh, I can't wait for the next women's boxing card, because it just didn't deliver. Every single fight was a decision, just not a lot for you. But on Saturday, we had a lot of fun action. We had David Morrell get gifted a decision victory over Imam Katayev. And Katayev drops David Morrell, outlands him. Was really fucking him up the whole fight, eating everything he had. And Morrell had some moments, but I thought Katayev clearly won the fight. Probably 6-4, 7-3, somewhere around there. In the end, unanimous decision victory for David Morrell. So that turkey money talk, and it talked for David Morrell on Saturday. But in the co-main event, Sheeraz Stevenson goes out there, silences the haters, does the damn thing, and dominates William Zepeda. Had a few moments early where Zepeda looked like he might pressure him early on, but Sheeraz Stevenson stands in the pocket, does what he needs to do, says, hey, I'm not just going to run from him like everybody says I'm going to. And he didn't. He stood there and kind of Mayweather-esque with his shoulder rolls, the way he was slipping the shots and then returning fire, catching Zepeda on the counters, saying, hey, my hands aren't shot. I just shook Ariel's hand weird because I didn't want to risk it. I don't know. But Sheeraz Stevenson, looking like he might be the best guy of these young up-and-coming stars, with the Gervonta Davis, with the Teofimo Lopez, with the Devin Haney, the Ryan Garcia, all the mix. It's looking like Sheeraz Stevenson might be the most focused and the best of all of them. While Teofimo looks good, he and Garcia are just off in la-la land, not focused. They're running their chops at whatever, saying the most controversial shit. You got Tank Davis, who didn't look particularly great against Lamont Roach, and he just got arrested the other day. Been arrested a lot recently. Devin Haney, while he seems focused, he hasn't looked great lately. He's taken fights against anybody, but he hasn't looked great lately. And then you have Sheeraz Stevenson, who he's had some fights where he hasn't looked great, but still dominates the fights. This fight, a mandatory challenger, a guy that's 33-0 coming in, and Sheeraz Stevenson handles him with ease. And then in the main event of that card, Edgar Berlanga took on Hamza Sheeraz. And Sheeraz does the damn thing, goes out there and really dominates Berlanga pillar to post. Berlanga had a little bit of success, but not much. Sheeraz drops him twice in the 4th round, finishes him off in the 5th with a series of with a 2-3 combo, right hand, left hook, puts him down. Too much power, and that's with a guy in Sheeraz that's moving up a weight class, a guy that has never fought at 168, or this was only his second fight at 168, didn't look particularly great his last time out. finishes Edgar Berlanga in the 5th round, something Canelo Alvarez couldn't do. And I know MMA math, boxing math, none of it means anything. But if we're talking just next challengers for Canelo Alvarez, this guy certainly threw his name in the hat. Now, the problem is he finished Edgar Berlanga and he looked scary. And Canelo Alvarez is going to be running from anybody that is a potential challenge other than Bud Crawford, where he's getting like $200 million for the fight. So, shouldn't hold his breath that he's going to get this fight. He's probably going to get the David Benavidez treatment. But regardless, hell of a showing for Hamza Sheeraz. He did exactly what Turkey wanted him to do. Turkey wanted him to get the win so he could position him for a Canelo fight. It's just Canelo's not going to fight guys that are going to challenge him or give him any sort of trouble. And Lauren Walker, I misspoke when I said that name, but I want to say she was a MTV personality, maybe on the Hills. I'm not sure. Could be mistaken. I don't know. I know the name, but actually I think Lauren Walker might be my wife's friend, childhood friend that she's told me stories of. Whoops. Doxing people out here. Look at me. Whoops. Look it up. Tell me if I'm doxing people out here. But we'll move on. Before we talk a little bit about UFC 318, we already touched on it. We got some combat sports news. Dana White went on the Nelk Boys podcast, pretty much confirmed what we already knew, where he's going to be working with the White House to get an event, a UFC event going on there. The logistics, they're working on it now. They're going to try to put the best card on, the same lip service he gives us every time he does a big thing. Hopefully it is the best card that they can put on, but I'm just not going to hold my breath. I have a feeling it might be a great card, but it's going to be an apexy atmosphere, because how the hell are you going to get 20,000 people on the White House lawn? Are you going to set up all new barriers just for this? Or are you going to have something where you're doing stuff on the South Lawn year round, so you have barriers? If that's happening, maybe, but yeah, old Dave says USA versus the world at the White House. Absolutely. Love the call, old Dave. You do John Jones versus Alex Pereira, Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor, Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. You know, you get those three out of the way. And then let's throw George Masvidal and Nate Diaz. You know, two Americans, but let's throw them on there for the fuck's sake of it. Let's make a fun card. Come back there. Who else could you have? Bo Nickel, have him versus Joe Pyfer, and, you know, loser leaves town match. Everybody wins there. You know, two American villains going head to head. Colby versus Chiesa, same thing. Not really a villain, but that'd be fun. You know, a lot of things you could do for the White House event, but I'm not going to hold my breath, because UFC has kind of let me down a lot in the past when we're expecting huge events. You know, the Sphere event was huge, but the card that they put together wasn't necessarily everything we dreamed of. You know, bantamweight title fight with Merab Dvalishvili, while Sean O'Malley was in that, and then a women's title fight on a 10-fight card. A lot of unknowns on the undercard. I get it was UFC Noche, so you want to tell that story, have Mexican fighters, but end of the day, that card, while it was super cool, it just wasn't, it didn't deliver. Basra is Afghani. We need an Iraqi fighter. Isn't Amir Al-Bazzi Iraqi? I thought Amir Al-Bazzi was from Iraq. I could be wrong and just... Yeah, he is. Amir Al-Bazzi's from Iraq. So, Basra. I know who he is. But yeah, Amir Al-Bazzi's from Iraq. Al-Bazzi versus Alex Perez. Have we already run that one before? We want to do a throwback and do Tatsuro Taira against an American also. If there are any other American... Oh, against Brandon Royval. What a move that would be there. Yeah, that would be hell of a move. Let's get all of our enemies out of here. Who else is... Abus Magomedov, Germany. Let's throw him in there. Who do we have at 185? We don't want Bo Nickel, because he could probably lose that. We don't want Joe Pyfer, because he could probably lose that. Do we give him Sean Strickland again? Abus versus Sean too? I don't know. I don't know what you do there. Abus probably beats him. Sean's kind of fat and out of shape now. We got it. Yeah, I like the bringing back Let's bring back World War II enemies and previous war enemies that we've had, like Iraq and Afghanistan. Stir up some international heat in the process of our 250th anniversary. But then I know some of the viewers in the chat were there for it. PFL had a town hall with Jonathan Coachman and Mike Heck from MMA Fighting. And Jonathan Coachman's pretty good at public speaking, a lot better than Don Davis. Goes out there, very clearly portrayed what they are planning to do next. And real quick, old Dave says Bryce Mitchell represents the Confederacy. Love it. Love it. Let's get someone from the New England cartel. Maybe Rob Font. You know, Bryce Mitchell's moving to 135. Let's send Rob Font. Is he 125 though? I don't know. Either way, Rob Font versus Bryce Mitchell. New England cartel versus the Confederacy. But yeah, PFL goes out there with Jonathan Coachman. He lays out exactly what their plans are. While I don't necessarily agree with everything they're saying, I don't hate it. You know, they say they're going to do a champion series type style, similar to soccer, where there's 8 leagues around the world. There will be tournaments in each one. The winner of the tournaments will go on to fight in champion series or have a chance to fight for the belt. They're also going to be coming out with rankings so we know where people stand internationally and in the title picture. They're going to have a champion for each division. They're going to get rid of the Bellator titles. And my favorite thing that we came away with from that, other than Jonathan Coachman not liking my question, which I thought was a very fair question. I just asked if they're going to merge everything into one organization and make it a little more clear, less convoluted, was what I was asking. But he says there's going to be ads on trunks. What a move. What a move. You're going to be bringing people in with that. You're going to get some real free agents with ads on trunks. But then they also go and say they don't necessarily want free agents that are big stars already. They want to build their own, which I love that too. You're going to get young guys that maybe they got NIL deals, maybe they from college, whatever. But I love that. I loved everything that they were saying for the most part. You know, they still have Don Davis employed, so not the best moves. But yeah, PFL making moves in the right direction. Jonathan Coachman asked me to be optimistic. He asked us all to be optimistic and give PFL a chance, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a whole show for Cape Town. Not the PFL Africa event, but the Champion Series version. All right, more combat sports news, though. BKFC officially announces Ben Rothwell versus Andrei Arlovsky for the heavyweight title. Mike Perry's going to be fighting a former UFC fighter. We don't know who it's going to be yet. There have been rumors potentially Robbie Lawler, Yoel Romero. I'm thinking maybe Nick Diaz. We could see him versus Jeremy Stevens. Yeah, it could be anybody, but Mike Perry's next fight is coming. I think it's going to be this fall. Ben Askren, on the road to recovery, has released several videos just talking, thanking people, saying he's getting better. He seems to be getting better video to video, so that's great. But we're here to talk fights. UFC 318. This is just how we're going to... Tony Ferguson has a boxing match coming up? No way. How'd I miss that? I think I heard people talking about it, but I guess when I hear something about Tony Ferguson, I'm just like, I hope he doesn't. Yeah, but August 30th. No opponent revealed yet, but hopefully it's somebody with pillow hands because good Lord. Good Lord, Tony Ferguson. Do not fight anymore, my friend. But yeah, we got UFC 318 coming out next week. We got a card coming out, a show coming out Wednesday, going live 9:30. Cody and I, main card breakdown, best bets. You know how it is. Had a pretty good week. Went up 7.8 units. Cody dropped 5.6 or 5.8. That's okay though. We move right along. Cody's still kicking my ass and kicking ass this year. But UFC 318. Not a great card, but it could be fun. It could produce some fun fights. You know, outside the BMF title fight, the main event, Poirier versus Holloway 3 and Poirier's retirement fight. We also got Roman Kopylov versus Paulo Costa, which could be a fun fight. You know, Paulo Costa, he's looked kind of like shit lately, but hasn't fought bums, hasn't fought scrubs. He's just been super inactive. He's got fun kicks. Kopilov's got fun kicks. It could be a fun fight. We could see somebody get finished. Probably not, though, because Paulo doesn't really finish people anymore and doesn't get finished himself. But then we got Kevin Holland giving his get back to D-Rod. They were supposed to fight when Kevin ended up slotting in to fight Khamzat Chimaev when the whole fallout where Chimaev missed weight and Ferguson, speaking of Tony Ferguson, he ended up fighting Nate Diaz. So Kevin Holland was supposed to fight Daniel Rodriguez on that card, and he's going to be getting his get back giving him that fight. Then you got Dan Ige taking on Patricio Pitbull in a fight that should be pretty fun, but it doesn't do a whole lot for the division, but it'll be a fun fight. Similar builds, similar fight styles in the striking. Pitbull's going to have a huge advantage on the ground if he can get it there, but Dan Ige's got a nasty takedown defense, so we'll have to wait and see. And then Michael Johnson is offering his services as a stepping stone to Daniel Zellhuber in a lightweight bout. Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen in a grudge match in Louisiana, Brendan Allen's hometown. These dudes don't like each other. If you remember earlier this year, they got in a fight in a casino. It went viral for a minute. And then you got Loke Dog versus Kyler Phillips as well on the prelims. So Vinicius Oliveira making his comeback. Super fun fighter. He's only a minus 170 favorite right now. So if you're going to put money on it now, because that's going to fly way up. He's going to end up as like minus 250, minus 300. I'm telling you. And then finally, last couple of things to touch on before we let you go. I said I'm going to do a show. I'm going to do a show on PFL Cape Town, South Africa Champion Series, headlined by the middleweight champion Johnny Eblen. He's going to be taking on Castello Van Steenis for his title. Dakota Decheva versus Sumiko Inaba in a women's flyweight bout. They have not announced if it's going to be a title fight yet, but I imagine it will be, or we'll at least get word of when the title fight will be. You got AJ McKee making his return against Ahmed Magomedov. Corey Anderson moving up to heavyweight to take on Dennis Goltsov. Solid card out of the PFL. We're going to give it a chance. It's going head-to-head with 318, and what a card to go head-to-head with. I'll throw them up screen picture-in-picture because UFC 318's not a great card. And this is the best PFL has to offer, so I don't hate on it. And then finally, last bit of news to touch on. This just came out a little bit before I went live here. Paul Craig's going to be leaving B Team Jiu-Jitsu. I imagine it has something to do with controversies from guys like Nicky Rod or his brother, whichever one of the two got in trouble, and also never being around. He's always traveling. He's doing things with the CJI. He's going just all over the world training jiu-jitsu, working with fighters, working with jiu-jitsu practitioners. So that could have been something to do with it as well. But that's all I got for you today. Thank you, everybody that's tuned in. If you're still watching, make sure you smash that like button. Hit us with a sub. I appreciate each and every one of you engaging in the chat, supporting the channel. We hit 250 subscribers. We're on to 500. We're going to do our best to get there eventually. But until then, it's been fun. It's been real. I'll see you Tuesday or Wednesday with another episode, and I'll definitely see you Wednesday live for main card breakdown. Let's go. End broadcast.